it
there.
just looks it's like looks weird, but yeah, all
Sweet.
good.
Awesome. Well, today I have with me a man who lays down the bass for one of Canada's most legendary rock and roll groups, four-time Juno Award winners, multi-platinum selling, road tested across the world, the Sheepdogs. And they're currently on tour with Bryan Adams, and we'll be hitting the stage here in Halifax at the Scotiabank Centre this Sunday, October 12th. If you're a regular listener of my show, Crossroads, here on CKDU, you've probably heard plenty of Sheepdogs tracks by now. From I Don't Know, Feeling Good, The Way It Is, The Way It Is, I've Got a Hole Where My Heart Is, Nobody But You, one of my personal favorites, Rolo Tomasi, as well as tracks off of one of my favorite records by you guys, live at Lee's, Bad Lieutenant. I absolutely love on that album. I could go on, but I'm here with the one and only Ryan Gullen. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me, man. Thanks. It's great when people are still playing rock and roll music in this day and age. It's awesome, especially when you're going deep, like talking about us. I'm sure you go deep on other stuff too. I mean, it's great to explore not just the usual songs that might get played on the radio or might be in people's like top songs on Spotify or whatever.
You're talking my language. All I do is it's every time I get on the radio, I say my goal is just to turn at least one listener onto a new song or something they haven't heard. One of the things that's kind of the fabric of my show is playing live recordings.
Nice.
I love the nuance and the spontaneity you get out of live shows. So I'm a war horse in that respect. Out
That's
there
great.
just trying to battle that, and I always tell people to maybe get off the algorithm if they're tired of hearing the damn thing that Spotify or Apple Music is saying it's for you. You
Yeah.
think you'll like it. Like, well, they might be right, but you're just scratching the surface. So anyhow, I've definitely been directed to your music. Uh,
What's funny though is like I would say it's interesting because you know, is the part of the reason why we're the band that we are is sort of the early version of that. Like, we grew up in
Interesting.
Saskatchewan, and it used to be back in the day, if you wanted to discover a band, you had to have like a buddy who had like a cooler older brother that would like turn
Right.
you like, like we grew up in like the late 90s, early 2000s in Saskatchewan. So it was like if it wasn't like I don't know, like Limp Bizkit or Third Eye Blind or something like that, there wasn't really a lot of ways you could discover that. So we really benefited by the fact that we were able to like use the internet to find music. I mean, back then it would have been like Napster. And it's funny,
Right.
so you and I initially became really good friends because we started sharing music that we were discovering on Napster and we'd trade CDs. And at that point, we both had mini disc players, which was very much
Okay.
advanced. But and so it's so funny, like, and so I think now it's like one of the things that's obviously to your point, it can be weird because it's like a weird feedback loop if you're only getting served up certain things and things like that. But it is also this amazing thing that it means that even though rock and roll music isn't the most popular music right now compared to like what's country and Taylor Swift and whatever,
Absolutely.
it's an amazing way that you can find people that love rock and roll music. So it also still gives us an amazing. So the newer version of what was me and you and being teenagers trading songs we discovered on Napster, like
Yeah.
you heard this song by whatever, that does exist now, which does make the modern era cool in a way too.
I would agree with that. Maybe I went too far in my algorithms just
No, no,
because
I feel you.
the one reason I think I can speak for many of us, especially some of
Yeah,
the listeners, I'm beholden to doom scrolling on Instagram, and
same. Yeah,
and I gotta delete it. I gotta delete it. Of course, I don't have the willpower, but what I do find every now and then, I find some amazing kind of smaller artists,
yeah.
and it I play them on the channel, and I go, wow, I really found someone. Like, who's an example? What are their names? There's some girls from I think Alabama. Well, it'll come to me.
That's
But
cool.
just
No,
recently
I mean
found
it happens to me all the time too, and it's like I do love that about it. I think what's also cool is on the other side of it as like an artist, it also means you can see where people are listening to your music. I mean,
right.
as an artist, like that you're listening to, whatever band, Sheepdogs, but I don't know that, you know what I mean? So it's sort of funny because now I can be like, oh wow, there's like a bunch more people listening to our music in Switzerland. I guess we got to go
Right.
there. Or like, it's kind of there's more feedback that musicians get to have too, which, I think there's never been more competition because it's so much easier for artists to like record themselves, put their own music out, put it out there,
Hmm.
get traction from a TikTok or whatever.
Yes.
Then at the same time, there's so many more. It's so oversaturated. It's also never been harder to sort of rise to the top. So the one benefit of that stuff is that it also allows artists to be able to see what's going on. Because
That's a bit,
you never knew that people were listening to music. You just like
yeah.
were kind of like hoping it was all the sheep
So
were
we just
working.
rely on promoters to tell you, hey, this area is a hotbed. They really like
Yeah.
what you're doing, and you
Yeah,
go,
your
okay,
agents or
fingers
managers,
crossed.
whatever. I know it's a very different thing. So it's the world is a very funny place. We're in a weird position because we were kind of around before
Hmm.
and around after. I just ran into like a young college like 20-year-old cousin of mine who I haven't seen since she was like a little kid. So it's very a weird thing about touring is you get to go to
Right.
these places and see people that you don't normally get to see very often. And I was explaining to her when we started touring, like GPS wasn't really a thing. And so it's very funny to think of like how far, even in like the 20 plus year, like 20-ish years that we've been a band, we went from going on tour where we'd have like you'd be reading maps or printing out maps off like MapQuest to now, you know everything. You can just grab your phone, wake up in the morning, you wake up in a new city, and you're like, oh, where's the best closest coffee shop
Yeah.
that I can walk to or whatever. It's very bizarre.
And there you go. I guess, yeah, you'd rely on locals to tell you where the spots were, I guess.
Like
Maybe as,
literally, we'd pull into a city and we'd be like, "Hey, we're playing at this place. Can you tell us how to get there?" Like, not even joking. Like, it was not.
good
It's just
grief.
so wild to think about that now. So yeah, technology has very much changed everybody's lives, but it's very much changed the world that we operate in.
Right. So where you said that, I mean, for example, you said Switzerland is a place that
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a real
Oh,
example or
I was
just an
just pulling through.
arbitrary,
Yeah.
but where have there been any places that have kind of surprised you, like regions that,
Sure.
and then that you've thus gone to perform or
Yeah, I mean, we've been traveling for a long time internationally for our music, so I think it's always really surprising. I think what always really it never sort of ceases to amaze me is when you go to any non-English speaking country,
Mhm.
you play, and then they start singing songs back to you. Like I think when one of the first times we went to France and sold out this big place, and uh, it was like early on, and we were just kind of like taken aback by like how many people were singing along. Because I think to your point, it's sort of what your shows, it sounds like it's about. It's about going deep and about like getting to know the artist deeper. You could do that more. It's a lot easier to like go deep on people's catalogs now as well, to the point. So yeah, so we would show up to show in France first time and people can't really even speak English to you after the show, but they're singing every word to all of your songs in a big crowd. It's kind of like the best feeling ever, but also very bizarre. So yeah, we've had that in a bunch of different places where you meet, this last tour we did in Europe, we were in Stockholm, Sweden,
Okay.
and I met somebody who traveled from like 9 hours away from very, very northern Sweden just to see us. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. I can't imagine very many bands that I would travel, 14, 15 hours for, uh, especially in Europe where everything's relatively close.
Hmm.
We're just like, well, you're my favorite band. I had to come and do it. It's like, wow, that's a big honor. So yeah, there's lots of things like that when you have those, you see the numbers and stuff, but when you have those real world reactions and you see how like people have identified with your music, it is very cool.
That is an amazing. That's a very interesting story. It's funny. I was thinking about something similar to that actually just yesterday. I was listening to a recording that John Mayer did in Brazil. I think it was one
Okay.
of the first times he went there, and it caught me off guard because it was almost hard to listen to the recording because they were singing along to every single song in a
Yeah.
not really an English speaking country. That
Yeah.
must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, it's an incredible feeling anytime, somebody is obviously your music means something to them. It's like, the process of making music is a very personal thing, and then it's sort of a bizarre thing where you really personal and you kind of release it to the world and hope people like it. So
Yep.
when you get that feedback and you hear stories about how I mean, we've heard all sorts of stories from, people saying like, "Oh, like your music really helped me." I met somebody once that told me that like our album Learn and Burn helped them get through a stint in prison, to
Wow.
somebody saying like, you know, this one song, is the soundtrack of me falling in love with my partner, and like you guys are literally like those types of things. It's like you take something that's very intimate and then give
Yep.
it to the world, and then it becomes something very intimate to somebody else. It's like a very interesting sort of exchange that, yeah, it's very touching when you hear that stuff.
That is interesting. I've been thinking about that a lot when I play music on the channel, especially when you're I was talking about this actually last show I did, just kind of common themes in terms of music, love, relationships, longing, certain things like that. And it's so interesting how sometimes you'll hear a lyric or like a song, and you'll really connect with it. But it's kind of interesting how listeners can recontextualize and apply it to their own life. And I
Yeah.
thought it's such a cool tool and how we can use it for our own self. And then I was listening to another song, actually, it was a JP Sack song, I Don't Miss You, a recent song he put out. And I was going, this is interesting because I'm not actually connecting with this song because of the lyrics, but it's actually because of the music, because I don't
Yeah.
have that lived experience yet. But that must be very rewarding. And how does it how does it feel when someone maybe they tell you, oh, that song and a certain lyric maybe it really struck a chord with me, but it isn't exactly your experience and maybe why
Yeah.
you wrote the song. I don't
Well,
know if
and I
that's
think that like in a lot of cases, that's why music is a little ambiguous, or there's certain songs that maybe the lyrics actually even don't mean a lot to you.
right.
It's more just contextualized within like the idea of what a song you might have an idea or a vibe you're going for with the music side of it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think anytime that somebody is like taking something of yours and identifying with it, it's like you can't really hate on it. It's pretty like special, you know what I mean? And another example of that is even just like being the band we are, obviously, like there isn't like a specific band that we really are like, we want to sound like this band. We want
Mm,
to be, we definitely pull our influences from a lot of different places. I mean, it's all from a lot of the same places, but
yeah.
in that sort of like 60s, 70s rock thing. But every once in a while you'll meet someone and they'll just be like, man, you know who you guys remind me of? Molly Hatchet. It's just like, what? Like I've never listened to that band before, but they'll be like that, and then you have to take a step back and be like, no, no, like that band obviously means something to them, and they're like
Right.
identifying something in you that they like based on that. So, it is always a funny thing. And same thing with the song, right? It's like it might have a meaning to someone, but music, themes in music, I think, are supposed to be, you're not. I mean, I guess historically music was, and songs are made to help like pass on lore and pass on
Mhm.
messages, things like that. But in a modern sort of context, I think most times it's made to be ambiguous. Well, it might be from a personal experience. It's also made to be listened to and enjoyed by other people too. So you want people to contextualize it themselves as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I'm going back to John Mayer again, but I was listening to a chat he had, I think it was with Sierra Farrell, I believe.
Okay.
It came out recently, and they were talking about that process of, you know, writing something, and I think the word they even used was so intimate and personal, putting it out to the world.
Mm.
Uh, and then he kind of, I think what he said was, it's almost like you have to give it 5 years or something, and you're expecting this one's going to be, this is the one, and then you don't really get the response you want, and then it kind of takes on a life of its own. And then
Yeah,
you get the stories that you're talking about, people coming back saying it reminds me of this. Or anyhow, the I wanted to kind of take what we were just talking about and bridge it to another question I had.
sure.
And it'll kind of relate. I'll circle back. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I've got uncles or older people in my life who go, they just don't make music the way they used to anymore. It's not the same. Like, what's this Taylor Swift? What's this? For example, not to hate on Taylor Swift, but
Ah,
um, and I always my back kind of goes against the wall. I'm like, well, that possibly, but I believe it's still there. You just have to look for it, and it's almost like this circle of like let's say they love the Rolling Stones.
yeah.
Well, is Taylor Swift or Drake or whoever's on the Billboard 100, is that their version of what's happening today? Are they only into the popular music? So where I was kind of wanted to go with that because it's always an interesting comment. People are always going, they don't make it like they used to. But I think you guys are a great example of that. I'm sure you hear that all the time. Someone who's inspired by, like you said, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, various bands. I mean, today I was listening and okay, here maybe I hear a bit of CCR, maybe hear some Allman Brothers. I even heard some Steve Miller to my ear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just it's
Yeah.
just what you hear. But what I think is unique about you guys is I can tell when I'm listening to it, it is your own flavor. It doesn't sound anything like a cover band. Like to even
Well, and I
say
think it's
that,
been a
but it
really,
also sounds modern.
yeah, I think we're really conscious of that though, right? I mean, we've been a band for over 20 years now and we've
Yeah.
made a lot of records. So, we don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we don't want to like, you know, pretend that it's, 1968 or something like that. And, I think we try to be very conscious of what we've done and be very conscious of what we're doing and
Hmm.
not think overthinking it, but also not just doing the same thing over, not being like, let's just replicate this one band. I think there's certain sensibilities of a lot of that music that we really like, but also like, we also like modern stuff, or
Yeah.
we've been influenced by things in our current environment too. So it's a funny one. I mean, it is also very funny too when you think about it, when you think about in context with like, you know, the Beatles are an incredible band. The Beatles are an incredible musician, but they're also like people are like, oh, like I remember a day when bands just put out records. They weren't on TikTok singing cover songs. And it's like, yeah, but the Beatles were like the most ultimately like, except for me, Elvis or something, like most marketed, like everything was all about is a modern day version of what we see them doing with like pop bands now. It just happened that they were making music for themselves, not like with a team of songwriters like crafting perfect pop hits and stuff. It's just a very different thing. But I think that we have always been from the place that the best way that we can have longevity in this, and the best way that we can be the most satisfied as musicians is, to make music we like not
Mm.
like we're doing and try to like craft it in order to like chase some sort of success or sort of chase a trend or something.
Hmm.
Not that many years ago, we couldn't get played on the radio. I mean, not that many years ago, like 15, 16 years ago, I was told so many times by people, well, you can't get played on the radio unless you sound like this. I mean, and that, in 2008 or whatever, it was like you got to sound more like Theory of a Dead Man or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's so funny because when we started to get success and started to get played on the radio, it was like related to things unrelated to the music. The music never changed. It was just sort of like, we still were doing the things we were
Yeah.
doing, but suddenly it was like in vogue to be able to like go and to play the music we were playing. And we've been very fortunate we've been able to like maintain that, because I know like I don't take that for granted. But I think that's what we, in a very similar vein, it's like we're not making music so that we can be successful. We're trying to be successful with our music, but we're not letting the success dictate how it is we're going to make albums. We're conscious of it, and we're definitely trying to like always challenge ourselves to be better. But in the same way, we're not like crafting a song or have a team of songwriters working with us to try to make the perfect pop
You
hit or whatever.
retain that purity and like the
Yeah, and
honesty
I think for us,
almost.
that's where that sort of like why maybe some people identify a lot of modern music. I mean, if you look at a lot of, not everything, because but a lot of modern country and a lot of modern pop music is literally a team of professional songwriters
Absolutely.
being like, okay, what do we want to sing about? But then every once in a while, you have like this, like these songs, or these things sort of rise to the top that are a little bit more organic and have success, and then all those songwriters, chase that whatever that thing is. So we've always been in the mind like, while we're never probably going to be like the most popular band in the world, we're not going to sacrifice what we're doing and to have like a moment of success, rather try to like create an environment in which we can have like longer success and do it for longer, which has sort of been, I guess, where maybe that. But it is funny, right?
I,
Like a so I was gonna say like a thing like the like Pink Pony Club, like that is like a
mm,
massive, massive song, but that wasn't written by a team of songwriters. I mean, that song has been around for many years. It just sort
hmm.
of popped off, and now like everyone's all about it. I mean, that's an example of something sort of rising up that wasn't like a team of songwriters.
Yes.
Right?
It does happen. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, but it's like it's very rare, especially in modern, modern age. So, anyways, yeah, I think
No, I
that's
don't. I don't think anyone would listen to what you just said and take that as cynicism. I think that's
no,
true, but I
no,
also think that listeners can tell.
yeah,
I think they can tell when you guys are putting out X album. You go, okay, it's not a formula. Like it's we see we can listeners know when something is. For example, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan, but he had Lionel Richie on the other day, and
okay,
that interview really took me. It was a kind of a gem. It took me by surprise, and he was talking about the intricacies of the music business and how there's all these suits trying to tell them we know this tested really well, so this is what's gonna sound right. And it was an interesting listen from the again, like you're saying, the artist's perspective of going, hey, like we're the creators, we know what we're doing.
yeah.
Don't try and force me into that and square. You're an accountant.
Well, and that's what that, I mean, it's never been, I mean, you're talking, he's referring to stuff in like the 80s and the
Hmm.
70s.
Yeah, yeah.
It's never been like that. I mean, I also manage the band and
Okay.
I involved and I run our label and all this stuff. So I'm very much involved in the music business side of all this stuff as well. And I think the biggest thing right now is that like it's never been more like accountants. Like people at record labels and involved in this stuff literally are looking at the information that they can pull from streaming platforms and social media platforms and YouTube, and that is how it's dictating their decisions. They're not making decisions. I mean, music executives have been amazing, but it used to be that they would like take a million swings at things and one artist would pay off and it would pay for all the other swings. It's like you have that one thing that would go get so big, but now even when you get the things so big, they're not like selling 30 million records and then that just pays off all the other things. So now music industry people are so much less likely to take risks on things that they don't see that have already solidified. So they're not going to like sign an artist they see at an open stage and then help them build a career. They like want an artist to have like a really strong social media following, a really strong, algorithmic and also whatever streaming platform following. And then even then it's like so it's a very different thing,
Wow.
but it's always been the case. It's just sort of like shifted. I mean, an interesting thing, sorry, I'll tell you is
Yeah.
I was we're on tour as you mentioned with Bryan Adams, and so I've been really
I'll get
trying to
back to
like
that. I'll get back
get,
to
no,
that.
no, I was gonna say I've been trying to get as many stories and stuff out of him as I can, and when we get it like moments where we're chatting and stuff. And it recently came up. I was talking about because we did this whole thing on this tour. We did recorded this Christmas special that's coming out
Oh,
later this year with him at his studio in Vancouver. He built the studio in the 80s. He bought like two buildings in
awesome.
Gastown in Vancouver and he built
Okay.
Warehouse Studio, which
I'm
is a
from
very
Vancouver. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So we were hanging there with him and I said like, man, it's wild to me that like in the 80s you were like there's lots of bands that have studios now, but in the 80s that was just not a thing. I mean, it was still sort of the end of that era where like you couldn't even go to a recording studio unless you had a contract with a major label. And you're very rarely as an artist. And he was like, yeah, it was really weird. I was just sort of given free reign on studio time and was really given a lot of opportunities. So I really learned a lot of recording and I got really into it. And that's really cool. He's like, yeah, I was like, so people weren't like coming around when he's like, I was making Reckless and people weren't really coming around being like, do this, do that. And he's like, the only time a record executive came by, the only thing that advice that he had is he said he heard Heaven and Summer of '69. And he was like, I wouldn't put those songs on the album. Which is just, that's a perfect example. There's like no shortage of stories of record executives being like, that story will never go where you'll never be able to do anything. That's not going to work. Because yeah, like there's a lot of great people in the music industry. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of people that just they don't go with they don't have a taste for music. They have a taste for numbers. It's like you said, it's a Lionel Richie thing where it's like it's a lot of accountants, looking
Mhm.
at can I make money from this? Not like is this going to have a cultural impact? So every night when I am after these shows, Bryan Adams, and hear like 20,000 people just screaming the lyrics to like all of these songs of his, including the Summer '69 or whatever, you're just like, man, imagine if he didn't put that song on that
Yeah,
record.
that's an
Good
incredible
executive.
story.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I can speak of that. I'm a management student currently at
I
Dallas,
know.
so I can tell you everything is about all everyone's talking about is data-driven decisions and everything. That's what the world's about right now. It's and I have
I mean,
friends
it
that are
is and it isn't.
private
That's what's so
equity and
funny about it, right? Because every time these things happen where something rises to the top that isn't data driven, it's sort of like, but I mean, I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've had many, many conversations with like people from big labels or people involved in big deals. And yeah, it's all about numbers, which is, it never has not been, but yeah, like labels aren't taking the same chances as they did because yeah, there's just not these big swings where you have an artist that just like pays off all the other expenses. Nobody's
that.
making $1 million records and shelving them like they were in like the '90s and stuff.
Right. That I guess that's kind of surprising me. I mean, I have very limited knowledge of the music industry, but I would expect to be at this time in where the world seems to be, there's more capital going in every direction. You can't keep up with it. That
Yeah.
there's not more funding for projects to take a chance.
But I think
Uh,
it comes down to like how you can monetize. I think that's the
I
the
see.
big question mark as you think about like people don't buy records anymore. Or Spotify and streamers pay money. I think people are still spending money on entertainment, but it's also like think about how many other things that you can do in your day that would take your attention. That's what being in a band is so interesting when you do hear stories where music has touched their lives. Because it's like, you decided to listen to our music instead of listening to every other song that's ever existed that you have access to.
Yes.
Netflix, plus, like whatever video game that you could also play. Like, in not that long ago, there's just not as much stuff taking your attention. Now it's like people, if you think about what somebody works a 9 to 5 job, how much time that they have to spend, whether it's going to a concert or going to a sporting event, or it's just there's so much more at our disposal. So that's why it's even more crazy that somebody's going to take their time. It's like so special for someone to see, like, you're important to me. I'm going to spend my time listening to your music or going to your shows or whatever. But at the same time, that's also why, like, it's so much harder for them to understand how do they, because no one's I mean, Taylor Swift is not a good example because she's like a anomaly, but even very successful bands aren't selling in Canada, even aren't selling like 50,000 records, let alone
Right.
100, 200, whatever, a million, all that kind of stuff. So it's that's what makes a difference. I think that being said, though, it's put more control on artists. It allows artists to do
Hmm.
more on their own. There's more things. I mean, and that's sort of the approach we've taken in the last few years, starting our own label, buying our masters back, all this kind of stuff where we can kind of like bring on more, take on more ourselves.
I read that you guys kind of have a plan now since you're running your own show now. You guys are the captain of your own ship. That you're maybe looking to move away from like a more cyclical release system in terms of writing albums instead of doing more singles like the one that just came out on October 3rd. Anyone?
Yeah,
It
I
was
mean, it's
anyone but
fun.
you? Is that right? Anyone but
No,
you?
yeah, nobody but
No,
you.
nobody but you. Pardon me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. No, it's fine. It just came out. I mean,
I love it.
it it's more. Oh, nice. Thanks, man. It's always, like I said, it's always like nerve-wracking and exciting when you put out
No, it's
music.
fantastic.
But it's a very interesting process because everything is just changing, and you're trying to like see what makes the most sense. I think the biggest takeaway from that is that just like, yeah, we don't want to have this thing where it's like you put out a record and then you do a bunch of things and then you wait a couple years and you put out another record. I think we're always writing, always recording, always, doing that. And because we have the control to put it out however we want, I will say, like, that song is there are more songs coming. It's the
Okay.
beginning of more things. And so, there is an album that's going to come out. But I think it's just the idea that we don't have to just do albums. Don't have to just, we can put out, like last year, we put out 2 companion EPs and a Christmas song. And we can put out, we can just kind of do whatever we want. We don't have to follow any sort of thing. And at the same time, we're always like paying attention to how things work and adjusting and figuring out what we want. I mean, we're still rooted in the era that we're rooted in. And we love albums. We love putting out albums, but we're just not making into a thing that we're just constantly recording rather than
Right.
like, set aside this time, block it out in the calendar, go to a studio,
And then try and derive inspiration
yeah. So like
when
all
you're not
these, all
feeling it.
these, we have a full record that's done, and all these songs we've recorded over the course of the last like year and a bit. Like we'd have like a week off between some things,
Wow.
and so go into the studio and work. It's like we just want to create the environment that, like, the ethos that I've really believed in is like in a world that sort of content is like becomes what everyone's striving for, but the best content you could put out as a band is music. Even though
Mm.
that almost seems weird for certain artists,
No.
right? Sometimes the music's an afterthought. For
Well,
us,
that's interesting too.
yeah, we want that we can want to play the game and do content and do social media and those things. We're not like you'd be like, oh, we're from 1975. We don't know how to do that. Like, no, I have an iPhone. I am on doom scrolling as much as the next person, but it's like,
Absolutely.
especially on tour, because it's boring a lot of the time. You're sitting in places doing nothing. But
Right.
uh, it's that we want to make sure that the content we are putting out there is music. Is in great live shows, things that people are motivated to come to again, putting out music consistently, like often putting out
Hmm.
music instead of, not holding things back until like it makes the right sense with release. Like I had an industry person be like, "You're crazy. You're putting out a single on the same day Taylor Swift's putting out a record." And I
Oh,
was
who
like,
cares?
yeah, why does it matter?
Who cares?
I'm sure there is like a very small percentage of crossover there, but like, it
But
doesn't matter.
and to your point though, I mean, we started the conversation talking about algorithms. Well, if my iPhone or whatever device you use
Yeah.
knows that I like your music or style of music, doesn't matter when you put it out because it's going to direct it towards me through that
Yeah.
funnel anyhow.
And also there's never been more tools that artists can utilize to try to find those people. And that's what's kind of cool about it. Like,
Right.
and also why it's cool for me as a music fan. I discover so many bands randomly just because it gets served up to me, and it's so nice. It's fun to be like, oh yeah. Or it's fun to see, be in a record store and see like a 13-year-old girl who got into rock music because of like Greta Van Fleet, but now
Interesting.
it's now buying like hearing like a 13-year-old girl awkwardly asking like where the Rolling Stones section
That's
is.
amazing. So I'd love to ask you a question kind of
Sure.
along those lines because you mentioned that rock isn't maybe what it used to be. Okay, I could maybe
Yeah.
understand that. But I'd counter that with saying today I see more than ever people wearing kind of reissue shirts of classic bands, and it seems to
Yeah,
be in vogue to be kind of showing off the classic music vibe. Do you think that actually translates to listenership?
I think so. Like I think I've always felt that rock and roll music has always, since it was sort of conceptualized or became popular, it's always sort of existed. It just kind of goes and it's never really fully gone away.
I agree with that. I don't think it ever will. I mean, knock on wood, but
I
it's
know, but I think that's always interesting. It's always funny and it always presents in different ways. Like obviously, like usually it's a reaction. If you look historically, usually it's like a reaction to another thing. It's like if you look at, you know, I think that like, there's the music of sort of like the 60s and the 70s, and then like disco became really popular. And then there was like, a real big pushback back to rock in like the 80s to push back against disco. And then, you know, that sort of became like hair metal. It was like commercialized version of what was popular, and then grunge was the pushback to that, and
right.
then grunge kind of moved into more like your like Nickelback and Stained and Creed, and
Yeah.
then like there was the resurgence of like bands like Black Keys, Kings of Leon, Hives, White Stripes, like all that stuff in the early 2000s, and then that became, it's funny because it just kind of goes and ebbs and flows like that, and I think we're sort of seeing that now too, where it's like yeah, there's some weird stat recently that like rock music is like really popular again in the US, and people are like, "Oh, you must be excited." I'm like, "Yeah," but I think it's like it's just nice to know that it's never going away, and we've been very fortunate that you know, we're not superstars by any means, but
Hmm.
we're able to still have a career as rock musicians and still feel comfortable enough putting the music out and having the feedback from it and pursuing what we're doing for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking because I was very excited to come and chat with you, and I was thinking, I wonder what it's like right now. And I mean, even though I mean, country is very popular, but I'd say rock and I mean, the kind of jam band style music and what etc. is adjacent to that. So I would imagine the listener who's not just listening to the, you know, who can't see the forest for the trees and only hears the formulaic stuff that we're getting would be, also a listener of rock and roll.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I sort of was getting at is that like there sort of is this natural pushback to like blatant commercialism, and I think you see that with like how pop music and I mean country music at this point is effectively for the
Yeah.
most, but
Yeah.
then you see things like there are artists out there that are kind of like a Coulter Wall or something like that that's like doing something that's literally like the exact opposite of that, but there always is that sort of
I'll have to
seeming.
check him out. I don't know.
Oh, you don't know Coulter Wall? Coulter
No,
Wall, Saskatchewan. I mean, he's very, very popular.
okay.
He is the counter version of what
I'll check him
what
out.
country music is. But anyways, like I think there's always going to be sort of that like pushback to what is like the blatant commercialism
Yeah.
of music, and I think that's what's kind of cool. Not to say we're some sort of like waving the flag of any of that, but I
Yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
we've just kind of never we've never really gone away. We've kind of just maintained it, but also we've seen the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of it all, and we're not like unrealistic about like or with our expectations.
Right.
And yeah, but I think to your point, like I earlier in our conversation, it's like people are, not buying albums, but people are since the pandemic, people have been spending more on going to concerts than like I think ever before. Like
Yes.
that's become a thing, right? That's like people want that experience, that experiential part of it, whether it is like a big Taylor Swift concert or like something like us. And that's why it's like so important. To your point, like live music is special and can be a very special experience. And so we try to have that be part of what we do too.
Absolutely. I mean, well, my friends, sorry, I don't know if you see, we're gonna get kicked off here
Oh, can
in
we
a
like
second.
extend
Yeah,
it?
I'll have to, I can extend it off to send you a new link if that's okay. Do you mind?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
because
that's fine. Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not letting me extend it for some reason, unless you have to go. But I'm actually enjoying this car
Yeah.
immensely.
No,
So,
no, we you gotta finish it. We can finish it. That's fine.
um, Yeah, because I mean, my friends, I say we'll be driving. Hey, put on "I Shot the Sheriff" live by Eric Clapton. They'll go, "Which one?" You have 30 versions on your phone,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's what I love about it. But anyhow,
That's so
you're here to talk about. You're on tour with Mr. Bryan Adams. You guys have
yeah.
been all across Canada. How's that been? You guys are near the end. Any
Yeah, it's been
any special
it's been
memories from it?
no, I mean it's been really cool. I mean, he's very inspirational. He's a guy that's a super star, has had, eras of hits and he's in his 60s and goes out and puts out like an incredible show every single night. And you just see the impact his music has on people. It's a very big honor to share the stage and be part of that. And yeah, it's been cool. It's like although our eras are very different, it feels like our music is very much rooted in the same place. And so it really works well together. So at first it kind of felt like maybe it was a little bit different, but then seeing his show and stuff, like he's an incredible performer and a player, and his band's awesome, and the songs are undeniable. And you're kind of like every show, I'm like, whoa, I kind of forgot this was also a Bryan Adams song. That's crazy. So no, it's been cool. It's been really cool, and it's been great to kind of get to know him. And he's a really inspirational, like really cool guy that you sort of look at yourself, as kind of at a point in my career. Like I'm 40 now. Like I've been doing this for over 20 years, and you see him, and he's another step further, and obviously way more successful. But
Yep.
um, it's sort of like you see how he carries himself and how he's handled himself in his career, and you're like, okay, like that's cool. But also just you see the power of a song, man. You see like
Yeah.
seeing, last night in Quebec City, like seeing 20,000 people just screaming every word to every song, and you're like, wow, this is incredible. So yeah, it's been really a cool experience for
Fan,
sure. And also
fan.
glad to just play these big arenas and have a really, it's a fun sort of bill together for sure.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's going to pay off. I'm very excited. I'm hopefully going to be able to see you guys on the 12th here in Halifax. It's your second last show of the tour. So,
Yeah.
second last, is that right? Here, I'll look.
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
sure.
because then we go to
Saying you're going to
Newfoundland.
up to Newfoundland on October 15th. And then I see also you're playing a gig in Toronto, October 25th at the legendary Massey Hall. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a fundraiser we're doing with a few people, so that'll be pretty fun too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a minute and a half left, so I mean we can wrap up here.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. I mean, as long as you got what you need, man. It's
No, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm sorry, I thought we'd do 15, 20 minutes, but this has been
oh yeah,
very
no, that's
interesting and
awesome.
insightful
Happy to-
conversation. I appreciate you taking the
Yeah, I
time
love it.
to
Thanks,
share
man.
with me, and I hope that a lot of listeners have been, inspired by, I think, the honesty that definitely shines through in what you're saying, but I know comes through in the music you guys create. So,
Oh, I think that.
no
Yeah.
question, a lot of people will be showing up not only to see Bryan Adams, but to see you guys too.
Yeah, well, and we're always going to come back to Halifax, so don't worry. We'll be back.
I hope so.
It's our second time there. I mean, not technically Halifax. We're in Hubbard's, but we were playing this summer with Maze. But yeah, no, Ewan from the band has recently moved to Halifax, so
Oh, there you
it's
go.
the hometown of one of our members. So
Sweet.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, best of luck.
thanks so
Thank you
much,
so
man.
much.
Great to meet you, and
Really, really appreciate it.
yeah, we'll see you again. We'll talk soon. Have a good one.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you
I
having.
appreciate it.
Hey,
Good
take
luck.
care, man.
Take care. Thank you.